Okay, so good morning. Hello, my name is Maribel Serrano, and today I'll be presenting my video for the Spanish-American War for Dr. Champel's class. And I'm just making sure that it's recording. Record. Okay. Let's see. In the late 19th century and early 20th century, period of expansion grew in popularity and in colonization in European countries. The United States wasn't new in participating in colonization as they have always been considered an empire due to the conquered territory and westward expansion they have done with the natives. American historians have tried covering imperialism as a mistake throughout our history. However, this is misleading as a major reason for imperialism was conscious power. Now, whether imperialism was either justified or opposed, Americans held strong beliefs about the nation's expanding role in the world. According to the sources provided, the Philippines was economically and strategically important to the United States. The nation viewed the role as a global task with the responsibility to conflict between the moral duty that mattered versus the greed of profitability and power. Pro-imperialists like the Scruman Report, Log, and Beveridge claimed the expansion was essential for increasing economic growth, racial superiority, became the Trojan device for secession, and the divine mission they believed God had given America. Their case rested on racist and religious language, with terms like duty to civilize, children of barbarism, and trusty under God. In comparison to anti-imperialists such as Ames, Bryan, and Flower, who defended democratic principles and Christian morality, who held the Declaration of Independence was not written to rule this way. Inevitably, the United States invaded and occupied the Philippines because leaders believed it was necessary to bring economic growth to the nation if they expanded economically and strategically, while trying to fulfill the ideological and religious vision of Americans' destiny. So hopefully the introduction established that I would be speaking about like the economic aspects or benefits of this. And then the ideological, I want to speak about like the um racial superiority that the imperialists believe that America like had, and then the religious aspect. So first we start off with for the sake of our commercial supremacy in the Pacific, we should control the Hawaiian Islands and maintain our influence in Samoa. So this is by log. And then we go to downloads. Let's see, log is right here. And it is right here. My paragraph is my page is 3, and this is the code that I used. And then Um, okay, so since the first one is about like the economic aspects and it has to do with stuff like that, for when it says for the sake of our commercial supremacy in the Pacific, we should control the Hawaiian Islands and then from there like influence more. So I view this as first we start from one place and then we go from here and then we go to there. So it's all about like, oh, we have to like conquer or expand first here and that would lead us to like greater influence. So he is big on like America being protected like overseas and then from there taking control of like the sea lanes. And then he does view this as oh like the future of America could be secured and foreign policies could then be played and it's all strategic like moves or like motives of what he wants to like do. And then I didn't write it, more like I didn't highlight it, but I also wrote about the Nicaragua Canal being facility helping trade works to expand the US into a stronger and better nation. So it's like, oh, the naval bases of overseas helps us expand our goods and like being better sold and better access to other places that can help like bring in like money aspects. And then we have Beverage based at the door of all east, and then we have our ocean, and then we have and with the Philippines, that power is and will forever be the American Republic. So for Beverage, let's see, downloads, and Beverage is right here. And not that one, but Pacific is our ocean, based out the door, page on found in page 1, and then the second code that I used is page 2. And for Beverage, I thought it was like funny the way that he kind of like interpreted certain stuff just for like the growth of America because he uses words like our ocean, and that is like funny to me because since when has an ocean just like belonged to America or just kind of shown like, oh, it's for America's like access. So he just shows um how he believes like certain places, or in this case, like the Pacific Ocean, was in belonging for America. And then from there, he would then have access like the Philippines because he writes the Philippines would be based at the door of all east. So specific like tactics or strategically like moves that would allow them to have like a greater expansion of power. And I think that shows like elevation and economic expansion. As we can see, like their ambition to grow economically is huge because they start kind of like thinking how trade routes can lead them to like grow in anything that involves money making, like their stocks or anything that has to do with stuff like that. And then that's when I introduced Brian's opinion, which we know that he's anti-imperialist, so he writes, but it cannot repel the moral law nor escape the punishment decreed for the violation of human rights. So let's see, we go to downloads. Then Brian, where is Brian? Right here. And it is page 1 where I found my quotes. And he writes about how for territory expansion, it didn't bear the consequences that he thought were good enough to go around doing exploitation and dominance. He did believe that this would only benefit the rich and it would be unfair to like the actual Filipino society. So we could see like the economic benefits in his eyes aren't great enough to like employ territorial expansion and be like, yeah, like the US can definitely help out with this and that. Because at the end of the day, it's only like, oh, the rich is being benefited, but what about the people? What about the society? Especially if they're Filipino like citizens, where is what they're gaining? And he did believe that the US could help them like guide them or like help them, but he didn't believe that their power should be like intervened to absolutely no limits, and where the US at this point just starts governing them and doesn't allow like a strong separate government from them like rise. And then we have the belief of like being justified of like um their the race, anything that has to do with, oh, the US can be seen as like a greater like vision or division. And then I feel like I should show the evidence for that one before I move on. I think I already did. Yeah. Um, let's see. So this one is the Scriven report. So downloads. Scriven, where is he? Oh, right here. So since my mouse is not working, I have to do it like individually, but it's this quote that we'll be speaking about, page 6. And then I put only through American occupation the first idea of a free self-governing United Philippine Commonwealth at all convincible. So this one is talking about like the belief of like the race superiority that they believe they have. They basically put down like this society as, oh, they're unable to like self-govern their citizens, or like not civilized to begin with. Absolutely, like the need for them to intervene and say, oh, like we would allow them through civilized, and only through us is that they're able to like grow. And it's huge on anything that has to do with them being kind of like phrased as like, oh, America will come in and help them create like this better government. But then it's like when the Philippines fought for their independence, they didn't want to give them to them because it's like, oh, America, it's huge on independence. Yes, like Declaration of Independence, but wait, guys, like you guys can't have your independence because we need you. to like grow, and grow economically. So you guys can't have it. And then we also have like privilege again with they are like children playing at men's works, again supporting imperialist views, and Orientals and Malays. So let's see, downloads, and then privilege. So right here we're dealing with Orientals and Malays. This is found on page 3. And he basically goes into like the US being established as a major power. He does argue that the primary justification for this is all like it's all over or kind of like under major success, but he kind of fights this as showing instead of saying, oh, like we would benefit by this and this and that, he kind of shows them as, oh, they are incapable of self-governing and they need our help. So that's why we must go in and like help them. This basically like just shows the views of like how the US thinks, and this is without like including religion yet, because that's the next paragraph, just showing like, oh, we need to help them so they're able to grow. And they did think that like the whole occupying through here will allow us to grow. So it's all about like also accessing like I think it was Beveridge where he kind of wrote like the like greater needs of like, oh, through the Philippines then we could like access China, and then from there like Asia like regions, when he's talking about like the ocean like aspect of like naval basing and like from here to here to here to there. And then Ames is a anti-imperialist, so he came in and contradicted this and says we should only add one more list of oppressors of mankind by compelling other nations. So he does speak about how he feels like the whole betraying liberty and equality as he opposes would only decrow democratic values. And then Ames is huge on how he believed that if the military were to be involved, then the human rights would be like suppressed. So he did like I kind of like would see this as, oh, there's like America, right? The leaders, they're trying to go in and help them grow as a society or just like help them civilize. But it's like, oh, if the people wouldn't want to, then they're gonna go in with force and that's gonna require the military, right? And then from there, at this point, you're just like where's the democracy principles that we grow in, if at the end like he thought that respect and strength was huge for like respecting other nations, and that citizens would want to like be supported rather than just being suppressed under. And then I'll show the evidence from the original document when I introduced the religion one, since it's from the same one. And it says this one was about like how religion played a pivotal role in imperialism. And I wanted to start off with aims for this one, as well as the light of what we call the gospel, every war, family quarrel, and family misfortune. So he does speak about how like arrogance and dehumanized actions start in with like the war. So he was huge for American values, saying how these policies, instead of uniting nations, would actually separate them. And he would think that the nation's health, as in like stabilized everyone, going over what actually mattered, which was like the principles, what ideologies and ideals that America was built on should have stayed, rather than going in and just like destroying a bunch of like you could say like territories, like killing people, all of those. Um, Ames was against arrogance and humanity, as I stated. And then he did advocate for a huge like nation respect, as what I also said. And then this just shows like how religion can be either like supported and then yeah manipulated, which Beveridge did that. And then for my original documents, since we're talking about Ames, let's see, downloads, we go to Ames, and then page 4 is where it shows this quote, and then we should only add the other one, we should only add one of the other list of oppressors of mankind by complaining other nations is found on page 3. And then let's see. For Beveridge to come in this and like twist it, he wrote, "We will not only renounce our part in the mission of race trusting under God," and then he put um for the like religion aspect. What I interpreted this was as he kind of puts like, oh, God is the one that's sending us to help them, and that's how we are fulfilling his wish. So as we can like tell, religion was huge on this manipulation aspect of it. It's either being followed by anti-imperialists or imperialists who are using that as a reason to like hide their true intentions. So I highlighted it like inferior races, but it's because of what I like thought that it meant, not because I took that directly from the thing. And then this portrays a misinterpretation of religion aspects and the leaders that they overlooked as their desire of power to justify their desire for control. So expansion was seen as a divine right and moral duty, trying to justify their treatment. Anything that has to do with like their definition of divine mission coming in and taking over. And we can see the huge difference yet again of like, yeah, like religion is like there, but it's also like, hey, like we promise you that God is the one that sends us, and that's why we're trying to like help you guys like rise, but only because like God told us. But then again, we're making like this huge, huge thing of like dominating you guys, like taking over, taking your like your goods, like sending this um like government that we're trying to teach you guys how to rule but under us. Oh, but it's only because God sent us, you know what I mean? Then this is found on page 1, so downloads. And then Revelage right here. The first page would be right here. Okay, and then lastly, we go to my counter argument, which was I just needed the source flower. So what? No, Benjamin O'Flower was the last source I needed, so that's why I wanted to include him on this one. And he writes how he admitted that the frightful torture known as the water cure treatment was used occasionally by the soldiers of this republic to force the unhappy Filipino to disclose desired information, and then degrading or better calculated, brutal, and savage in the nature of our soldiers and the barbarous and inhuman actions. So I liked reading like Flowers's source because I saw like a lot of like excerpts of like you could read it, you could understand it as confessions or like people's like perspectives or views that spoke about this. And it shows like the huge like crucial cruelties that the soldiers did um with absolutely no control. But then again, they're huge on like moral principles that show, oh, like our values are this and this and that, but then it's just contradicting everything that they go through. And he also writes that if American citizens were to see everything that was happening of what their own like authority was doing to the people, that it would actually like shatter them and break them. Because he does write about how a bunch of like civilians were killed, and he wrote this as the end of democracy. Basically how these tactics were just being covered, how these tactics were covering the suffering. And he argues like the moral decay that illustrates the actual purpose of guiding and achieving God's will was just being advertised, so like huge on hypocrisy. But then again, we also have Lodge and Privilege that still support this as their imperialists. They write, I wrote how they expressed their views as tragic consequences that needed to happen rather than proof of letting American principles and values down. So it shows again like the difference is like religious comes ties along with like the economic expansion that they wanted. But then it's like, oh, but then there's also like our race is viewed as superior. And it's also like, yeah, there's like these, like you could say evidence or proof of what we're going through. But it's okay, guys, because everything is justified. We promise you we're just here to help. It's just like a huge, huge, huge misinterpretation of like words and how they want to manipulate it to be seen for their own good. And then lastly, for the conclusion, I didn't include races, but I did want to read like what I understood for overall. So it's like, oh, there's the invasion of the Philippines that are portrayed as a nation, being like dominance and promises of independence, as we can see from like I'm pretty sure it was the Screaming Report that they promised independence and like helpful guidance on all of that, but they didn't give it to them like um through amount of period of time. And then I put prosperity in a nation becomes more than just wealth and a stable economy or even moral principles that the Declaration of Independence was funded by. So this would be like, oh, the anti-imperialists strongly go by this. At this point, it becomes humanity. The decision in a nation take it decisions a nation takes reflects on the preached liberty and mindset. The end goal is only through humanity is that we can advance. So I wanted to end like with a thought of, yeah, like when we think of like advancing or like, hey, how is this economy doing? How is the nation growing? We think of like, are we at top of the list? But it's like more than just like status or like money reports or I don't know, like increasing charts, stuff like that. It's not like the only thing that should be mattering to see how we're growing or if we're better or less. At this point, it just becomes like our actual like morals, but you can justify those morals into interpreting and be like, oh, we are sent by God and that's why we're helping. It's just a bunch of like stuff like that that shows how colonization was huge for this time and how like lies and false like their restrictive opinions for just their benefit goods were being put onto. And then I am not sure if I showed my evidence for flowers, so I think I should do that. So let's see, downloads and for flower, we are right here. So these two codes on page 1. And I think that would be the end of my presentation. So hopefully my thoughts were like kind of clear. I kind of like tend to like, no, I want to say this, I want to explain that. But maybe like the use of words may not be the best, but that's was my take on the Spanish American War. And thank you so much.